the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 264 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Bexon. Today, we're actually talking with a future potential Costa Rican presidential candidate, Juan Carlos Hidalgo. He's the representing the PUSC party, PUSC, here in Costa Rica. Costa Rica has basically elections in February next year, which I'm almost sure will probably go to a runoff, so we probably won't know till about April. But Juan Carlos is one of the front runners here. Spent quite a bit of time up in the US as being on CNN and comes from a kind of more of an economic background and has some pretty, I would say, interesting thoughts on the future of Costa Rica. So today we're going to be talking to him about what's happening in Costa Rican politics and what direction he wants to take Costa Rica. We'll also try and get some other future presidential candidates on the podcast as well. I know that sounds crazy that presidential candidates will come on this podcast. But again, I think it's a way for us to I suppose, get their viewpoints out to investors out there, as well as expats here that are Costa Ricans that can also vote as well. This will be my first year voting, so it should be very interesting. And it's we have about probably 20 plus presidential candidates in this campaign. So bit crazy. Well, guys, remember, if you're looking to invest here in Costa Rica, we have a bunch of investments available, starting at $50,000 up in La Fortuna, up to about $160,000 a share. It's kind of more fractional investment. If you're interested, email us info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. Also, you can click in the link. You can click in the details down below. There's a link there, and you can actually organize a time to chat with us. It'll either be me or someone here in my office. Yes, I do have time to meet with you. But again, info@investingcostarica.com. But let's get straight into the podcast. Good morning, Juan Carlos. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good, man. Good. It's a little rainy outside today, but I'm in Costa Rica, so it's could be worse.
It's been a pretty erratic rainy season, It doesn't rain every single day.
I like that. I like it because, again, I'm having to pour foundations and dig stuff in certain areas of Costa Rica, so it's really helped me, the weather.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of, what is it, September, and some days it looks like it's summer outside,
Yeah.
It looks like it's December or January. You have these amazing sunsets. It doesn't look like rainy season.
No, it doesn't. Well, last year looked a lot like rainy season, too much like rainy season. So this year, hopefully it'll. But, well, Juan Carlos, my first question for you, 2025 so far, do you think it's been a good year for Costa Rica? It's been a bad year for Costa Rica, and why?
It's not a good year for Costa Rica for sure. We keep having a very bad security crisis. This is the worst security crisis in our history. The trajectory of murders committed this year is the same as in 2023, which was the highest murder rate in our nation's history. And we will probably finish with a murder rate similar to 2023, which will make us the second most dangerous country in Central America.
That's incredible to just hear that, though, man, because it doesn't feel unsafe here.
The only country that has a higher murder rate in the region than Costa Rica is Honduras. It's appalling. Not even Guatemala. Guatemala is now below Costa Rica.
Wow.
And you see it. There's no safe place anymore. You saw the shooting in Santa Ana a couple of weeks ago in a very popular bar. And you see shootouts in outside schools and outside bars. And it can happen anywhere. And the number of Costa Ricans and people murdered every year is above 900. So this is affecting, of course, our international image. We see tourism being affected by a couple of factors. One of those is that Costa Rica has become a very expensive destination. But now, on top of that, we're not safe anymore. So I think that when you ask Costa Ricans and when you see polls, you see that more than 50% of Costa Ricans believe that security is the most pressing concern.
For me, as a Costa Rican, it's security and exchange rate is my biggest concern, because, again, they're the two things that bring investors here and keep investors here.
Yeah. And the exchange rate, that's quite the discussion right there. just today I was looking at the numbers, the latest numbers on inflation. Inflation is -1 right now. The central bank has tightened the screws too much.
Yeah.
And it's doing it on purpose. I don't think that there's
100%.
nothing accidental here. There is a deliberate policy from the central bank, probably under pressure from the government, to have a strong colon. A strong colon because most people earn their incomes in colones. Even the people who work on those sectors that are exposed to the exchange rate, affected by the strong colon, like tourism and export industries and so on, their workers earn in colones. And that makes it politically sensitive for someone like me, for a candidate, to say, oh, we need a weaker colon, because then people will say, well, this guy wants to debase my salary, he wants to debase my income. So from a political point of view, it's a very sensitive subject. You don't see many candidates out there talking about a weaker colon or to devalue the currency. But it's something that if it's not corrected in the short term, we're going to have serious consequences, particularly on employment, in employment in exports and services and agriculture and tourism. If you look at the employment numbers, and also yesterday I was looking at those, the number of Costa Ricans, the number of people working in Costa Rica is lower right now than the month before the pandemic. So people are withdrawing from the workforce. We don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're withdrawing from the workforce. Less Costa Ricans are working every month, and this is not sustainable. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for the country.
Yeah, I mean, my concern with the exchange rate is it's just going to swing back the other way drastically, and then we're going to have a bigger problem, if that makes sense, because it's been held down.
Well, you have something to worry about, many things to worry about, but one of the particular things about this discussion is that people getting loans in dollars is increasing at 3 times the pace of people getting loans in colones. Of course, I mean, people react, they are rational actors. And if you are making your income in colones, of course you want to have a debt in dollars, So indebtedness in dollars is increasing at 2 times, 3 times the rate of indebtedness in colones. And this is dangerous then, because you're going to have then a lot of people exposed to a change in the exchange rate. And it's going to be more difficult for the next president or the next authorities to make the necessary correction on the exchange rate, because then you can leave many people exposed to their loans, So this is a particular sensitive area. Another thing that doesn't have to do with that, but did you know that last year 130,000 cars were imported into Costa Rica? New cars and used cars, 130,000 cars.
That's insane.
And we are in the trajectory for the same number this year. And this is because of the exchange rate. People are buying cars, and this has to do a lot now with the collapse in our roads, the traffic, which is making life unbearable for many people out there. So you see many of the secondary consequences of having a policy of a strong colon that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, it makes sense from a government point of view that has its income in colones and its expenses in dollars, if that makes sense, from an international debt point of view, because, again, years back, it was nearly 700. So if you devalue, make stronger your colon, it's easier to repay your international debt.
In theory, yes. Yeah. And that certainly happened from that from that perspective. But on the other hand, you see a drop in the revenue from the income tax of businesses, of industries. So in theory, yes, the government is saving money by servicing its debt, its dollar-denominated debt because the colón is stronger and the revenues in colón are strong. But the problem is that they aren't. Some industries are struggling, and you can see that in the revenue from the income tax that comes from these industries. Corporate tax revenues are dropping, and that's making that the fiscal situation actually is deteriorating. So maybe in the short term, it made some sense to have a stronger colón from a fiscal perspective.
Yeah.
But now, when the effects of the exchange rate are becoming pervasive, it doesn't make any more sense from the fiscal perspective, at least, you know. So I don't think it's a good economic policy either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, dude. I mean, I love a free exchange rate that moves around. I mean, it's a laissez-faire type of government rather than something that gets it's unfortunately, sometimes governments get too big and involve themselves in stuff that they don't need to sometimes. But anyway, yeah. I mean, what do you think is there any other challenges that you think that Costa Rica is going to have in the future? I mean, you'd mentioned their security, you'd mentioned exchange rate. Is there anything else that you think that's going to be challenging for Costa Rica in the future?
Well, there are several things, but I always mention the fact that we have a dual economy that is not sustainable in the long term. Just yesterday, we had a headline in the newspaper saying that the gap between free trade zones,
Yep,
the special regime, what we call, and the rest of the economy, what we call the definitive regime, that gap is growing dramatically. And you have free trade zones growing at a yearly rate of 12, 15%, whereas the rest of the economy barely grows at 2%. And free trade zones only represent 15% of our GDP. So we have two Costa Ricas, and that's an increasing topic, when it comes to talk about electoral politics. The two Costa Ricas, the La Costa and La Rica, the coast and the ridge. You have the Central Valley, where most of the free trade zones are. You have plenty of job opportunities here. You have a well-educated workforce. And then you go to the coast, or you go to the rural areas, and you find many people struggling. You have people who didn't finish their high school. You have pervasive unemployment, pervasive informality. Right now, the informality rate in Costa Rica is 45%. Over 180,000 Costa Ricans are working in the formal sector. And this is a time bomb, because sooner or later, these hundreds of thousands of Costa Ricans that are not working in the formal sector, they're going to have to retire, and they're going to have to need a pension, which they didn't pay for during their lives, working lives. And so you have a time bomb, a social time bomb there that sooner or later is going to become a huge problem for Costa Rica's finances. But I think that's the greatest challenge. That's why in my campaign, I talk about leveling up, that Costa Rica needs to level up the playing field. And it doesn't mean bringing down the free trade zone regime, which some politicians believe that we need to get rid of the free trade zone regime and that we need to burden them with taxes and so on. What I'm talking about is we need to ease the burden for doing businesses for the rest of the economy. If free trade zones are so successful, how come we cannot make the rest of the economy more like a free trade zone? Of course, there is a whole debate about taxes. Free trade zones, they don't pay income tax, at least in the short term. Eventually, they start paying after 8 years. But it's not only about taxes where you need to level up. You need to level up when it comes to regulations. You need to level up when it comes to the services that the government provides to businesses and so on. So that's most of my economic plan is based on the idea that we need to level up the playing field for the companies, the businesses that are not on free trade zones.
I mean, you bring up a good point there, and it kind of, I come from a tourism world, as you know, and tourism can have huge impacts in rural areas, huge impacts. I mean, look at areas like Punta Islita,
Indeed.
And that's just one area. I mean, La Fortuna, I mean, you wind back the clock years, La Fortuna, Monteverde, like all of these rural areas. So the question here is, why has there not been free trade zones and tourism put together where you're like, hey guys, we have huge unemployment up in Upala or, in San Vito. I'm just pulling these names out. We're going to make them free trade zones for tourism, and people can go in and they can get like IDB, kind of lower interest loans. They can kind of develop stuff that's already there. They have to employ locals. They get reduced social security, but they have to also buy locally as well. You can't go out to some Belka, the big, companies. You have to buy everything locally. And then that economy starts to move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that tourism and agriculture are particularly sensitive industries for the country, because they take place where we need employment the most, which is the rural areas. For some particular reason, San Jose is not attracted to tourists. When you have friends coming into the country, you tell them, don't spend a night in San Jose. You go to the coast immediately, or go to volcanoes and so on. But that's why I think that tourism needs a particular focus of attention from the authorities when it comes to incentives. And it could be your idea of a free trade zone or other some sort of framework, but we need to keep those two sectors you have to keep them in mind when it comes to elaborating policy.
It's very frustrating for me, and I know a lot of my friends in tourism, that the government never really cares about tourism. They don't put that much focus on it. Like, there's never that much talk about it, and it's a huge part of the GDP directly and indirectly.
Yeah, and I think it's 6 or 8% of GDP that can be attributed to tourism.
Yep.
And it's there, it's something that I think the authorities take for granted. It's going to keep happening. And tourism is a way more complex industry than many people believe. I mean, and it's a changing industry, facing lots of competition from new destinations. Sometimes we believe that we compete as a country with a region, with other Latin American countries, but we don't. I mean, if we want to attract European tourism, we're not competing with Guatemala, we're not competing with Colombia, we're competing with Thailand or with big countries in Southeast Asia,
Correct.
So we have to keep all this in mind. And I think that when you see the discussion on certain policies, you can see that some politicians take for granted tourism. It's going to happen. They're going to keep coming here. We are too splendid. We're too beautiful for tourists not to come here. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I'm particularly worried, again, about the security situation.
Me too.
Because it takes a tragedy to taint the image of Costa Rica for a long term. And we cannot rule out that could happen anytime soon.
But I mean, how did we get here, Juan Carlos? That's the question. I mean, it just seems in the most recent government, we seem to have had this issue. Maybe it was from governments before, I don't know, but it's like, I don't know how we got here.
It's been building up. That drug trafficking is a quite fluid enterprise, a fluid business. I don't know. I mean, you probably remember Miami Vice back in the 1980s, the series. Well, Miami was the murder capital of the US. The cocaine coming from Colombia used to enter the United States through Miami. Then the Coast Guard, the US Coast Guard, shut down the Caribbean route, and then the cocaine started flowing into the Pacific, and then it came from land. Mexico became the new hotspot for drug trafficking. So it's always changing. It's an always changing picture. And the thing is that in the last 15 years or so, the attractiveness of Costa Rica as, for these criminal gangs, transnational criminal gangs, lie in the fact that we became the leading exporter of cocaine to Europe. Why Costa Rica? Well, the cartels found out that Costa Rica is a very successful exporter nation. We export a lot of agricultural products to Europe: coffee, bananas, pineapple, flowers, etc. And we don't have a strong security forces. I mean, we abolished the army back in the late 1940s. Our police forces are pretty weak. So they all of a sudden they found a soft belly in the region where it's pretty easy for them to conduct businesses. So we're close to Colombia. Colombia is producing right now the most cocaine in its history. So the cocaine is freely flowing into the country. This government has taken some decisions that are pretty suspicious. For example, it dismantled the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
It withdrew the drug police force from airports and the borders. Costa Rica used to be one of the leading nations in the region when it came to seizing cocaine. Now we barely seize any cocaine in the country. It's not because the drug is not coming into our country. So that's why I think if we need to, if we want to face this threat, and I think it's an existential threat to the country, we want to face it seriously, we need international support. We cannot by ourselves defeat these drug gangs. Transnational, I keep insisting, it's transnational drug gangs. That's why one of my leading proposals when it comes to security is reaching an agreement with the European Union so we could have a police force from the European Union based in our port in Moín, because it's only one port in the Caribbean that is the focus of all these exports, and make sure that the Europeans are the ones monitoring, screening that our exports are not contaminated with cocaine to going into Europe. I already had this discussion with European politicians. I've been in a couple of meetings with European members of parliament, with members of several sister parties that my party, La Unidad, has in Europe, the CDU from Germany, Partido Popular in Spain. And they all agree that this is a great idea. They say, well, for us, it's easier to monitor, to control a port that is this big compared to ours. You know, it's easier to make sure that the drug don't leave Costa Rica in a port that is this big, instead of trying to find drugs in ports like this in Hamburg or all the other ports, Rotterdam and the big ones in Europe. Every week, every month, we see news coming from these countries of cocaine coming from Costa Rica being seized, tons of them. So for me, this is the most important policy that you can implement. You can always talk about more police force, more policemen, which we have to have, tougher laws, which we have to have, more equipment and technology for our police forces, which we need to have. We need to do all those things. But as long as we don't control our port in the Caribbean, and as long as we don't make Costa Rica less attractive for international drug criminal organizations, we're going to keep having this problem. We're going to keep being flooded with drugs and with all the consequences that those drugs bring.
I mean, I think it's the number one priority for the country, to be honest with you. I mean, economically, we're doing okay, if that makes sense. But like the security thing can just wipe everything in 2 seconds. And, you know, I mean, just international press that we're getting sometimes is not great. Like, you know, we're still doing okay. Like there is time. But I think whoever the next president is, that like this needs to be their number one priority. And again, I agree. It's not just about putting more policemen out there at all, but like you need international help. I agree 1,000% on that. You know.
Yeah, and we just introduced in the country extradition. Extradition was something controversial for many years in Costa Rica. We pride ourselves that we didn't extradite our nationals to other countries, you know. But faced with this reality, finally the political class in Costa Rica came to the realization that either we extradited violent criminals or tied with organized crime, or our justice system cannot cope with this threat, you know. And this is something where finally we need to come to terms with the idea that we need help from abroad, that our security forces, our judicial system are not strong enough to face this threat.
Juan Carlos, again, forgive me for my naivety. Is it the, I suppose, working class, lower class that like makes the decisions in Costa Rica of whether you win or you don't win an election? Is that right or not? Like what is the base that any presidential candidate needs to win in order to win the election in Costa Rica?
That's a great question. That's a great question, because the problem now is that we have a very fragmented political landscape. We used to have a bipartisan system like most of the world.
Yep.
We had a center-right party, which was mine, Unidad Social Cristiana, and then a center-left party, Liberación Nacional. And that was the way of doing business for up until the early 2000s. And then it started fragmented. And now right now for this election, we have at least like 8 presidential candidates that are going to be drawing attention from the media, are going to be invited to the debates and so on. So you have candidates that are catering to different constituencies. You have conservatives, you have evangelical, you have free market liberals, you have center left, you have communists, and it's very difficult then to say, well, you better win this segment of the electorate or you're out, because the thing is that now to win an election, you need to go into the runoff.
Correct.
Back in the old days, you were expected to win outright in the first round with more than 40% of the vote. Now it's pretty much a certainty that there's going to be a runoff. And then the threshold to reach the runoff has been decreasing in the last 3 elections. In 2014, it was 29%. In 2018, it was 21%. And in 2022, it was 16%. So you can go into the runoff with a very small segment of the electorate. You can cater to a constituency of, it could be urban, it can be rural, it can be well-educated, it can be working class, whatever. But if you are successful in tying up that constituency, then you can make it to the runoff. And once you're in the runoff, anything can happen, So
as we've seen before.
It's a big discussion. It's a big discussion within a campaign. Should we have a message that is broad appeal, or should we have a message that goes targeted to a particular constituency that is like a low-hanging fruit of your message? For example, if you're a conservative candidate, you want to appeal to religious voters, and then your message is going to be targeted to religious voters. If you're a center-left candidate, probably you want to appeal to a younger voter base, etc. If you are a center-right candidate like mine, I try to talk to everyone, but of course, people who own businesses, who are independent professionals, and so on, people who struggle every day paying their bills and trying to keep their businesses open, that's my natural constituency, and that's the people I try to reach out to.
What would be your message to Costa Ricans listening to this podcast, going into this election? Like, what would you like them to know in a very, I don't know, in a minute, dude? Like, if I gave you the opportunity, which you have now with this podcast and everyone that listens to it, to give them a message for 1 minute, like, what would that message be?
Well, Costa Rica cannot continue in the same path as we've been in the last few years. We have become the second most violent country in the region. We have a crisis in our healthcare system where 8 people are dying every day in waiting lists. Our education system is in shambles. And if we can go on different aspects of our life and see that the country is not doing well, we need change. But we need change within the parameters of our Republican system. We cannot torch our nation and try to found a new country like the current president is promising. I don't believe. We have to be very careful of the populist threat that we're facing in this country, which is very similar to what I've seen in other countries in the region, where you have this outsider that finds out that the population is tired, the population is mad about a system that is failing in security, is failing in education, is failing when it comes to infrastructure, is failing in the healthcare system, and they want change. But the problem is that this outsider promises change only based on the premises that you need to give him absolute power. And that's exactly what we're facing right now. That's the narrative of the current president. Give me 40 diputados, 40 MPs, and I will solve all your problems. Well, we have seen that picture in other countries, and we know it doesn't work.
No, it
we
doesn't.
need solutions. We need concrete solutions to our problems. And the Costa Ricans deserve a candidate that speaks truth to power, speaks candidly about the problems that we're facing, and explains which specific solutions, are going to be applied to every single problem. I don't believe in giving a blank check to anyone. And we have the president saying, give me a blank check. If you give me 40 diputados, close your eyes, and everything will be better. I think that's a trap. That's a huge mistake, and that it never ends well. I'm here with a very strong platform that we've been working on for more than over a year, with very serious people. I proud myself with the number of people that have joined my teams when it comes to economic policy, when it comes to education, healthcare, and so on. And we are going to face the next months. We have almost 5 months ahead of us before the vote in February, and we're going to give Costa Ricans a very strong platform and very concrete solutions to the problems that we're facing.
It's a pretty good message, dude. Thank you very much. Well, my last question for you, which again, every guest answers. I mean, if you had $500,000 to invest into a business or real estate in Costa Rica, Juan Carlos, what would you do with it and why? Did it stop there? Juan Carlos, my last question for you that I love to ask everyone. If you had $500,000 to invest into a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you invest it in and why?
Well, if I had that kind of money, I will invest in my campaign.
Well, of course, of course.
Right now.
Of course.
But if it weren't for that, well, that's a great question. I think I'm going to repeat the answer that I gave you a couple of years ago. I think that medical cannabis, medical marijuana, can be a very good business for Costa Rica. We have already legalized it.
Yep.
The regulatory framework is still a working process, and there is still some resistance from the authorities in granting permits because it's new, and there is some taboos regarding marijuana. But I think that that's an industry that can take off eventually. And obviously, I think that marijuana has to be legalized for recreative purposes too. And that could be a very successful business if we see what has happened in other countries that have moved in that direction.
Yeah, that's a great answer, man. I love that answer. Well, Juan Carlos, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the podcast. Again, I'm sure that we'll get you on at some point in the future, but appreciate you taking the time out of what I know is a very busy campaign to join us.
Thank you, Richard, for the space and the opportunity to talk to the people who watch this podcast.
Awesome. Have a great day. Well, not every day we have a presidential candidate who stands a chance. Join us here on the podcast. But Juan Carlos has been a friend for many, many years. And again, I mean, I think it's what he says there is just security is number one issue here. And the current government doesn't seem to be that focused on it, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. So I think it's, probably time for a change, but we'll see. I mean, again, with all these presidential candidates, you just never know. I mean, he mentioned there that in the last election, the current president, Rodrigo Chavez, got 16% and then went on and won it on the runoff. So we're probably going to see a runoff again here, guys. I mean, he mentioned there we have like 8 strong candidates that'll be in the campaigns and stuff, but usually there's around about 20 of them. So but yeah, just some great points there, guys. And I mean, I would say that I never feel unsafe here. Yes, we've, definitely seen a spike in murders in certain areas of Costa Rica, but it's very isolated. And like, I would say that not many tourists are involved in it. The tourist areas are somewhat protected a little bit, but again, it's the biggest threat to the country. And, it's something that I know that all the presidential candidates, well, most of them will be very focused on. And it's something that's very, important to Costa Ricans as well. So, but anyway, guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please give us a review online, 5 stars, hit the subscribe button. There's a lot of effort that goes into these things, organizing them, setting them up, guys, and then also editing them as well. For anyone out there that's ever done it before, will very much understand. If you're looking to do anything here here in Costa Rica. Again, whether that's development, investing, it can even be looking to buy a condo down here or build something or develop some land. Again, we do a lot of that development ourselves, guys. We have 5 full-time engineers, project managers. We're about 20 people here in the business. We've also just started a construction company as well, just because, again, the construction company we were working with was like, look, we can't work at the pace and stress that you put us under. So we were like, okay, well, we'll do it ourselves then. So that's our newest venture. But again, you can email us info@investingcostarica.com, info@investingcostarica.com, or contact us. All the details are down in the description down below. But thanks very much for listening. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.